The Greek government is hopeful that it can hammer out a deal with its EU creditors to alleviate the increasing debt burden that the country owns. The International Monetary Fund has recently said that Greek debt would become explosive after 2030. It comes as the German finance minister, Wolfgang Schäuble, says that Greece could cut its debts only by leaving the single currency. Dhaval Joshi is from BCA Research, who's with us now with some more analysis on this. First of all, as we sit here, midday Friday, what's your expected outcome of this? We got, I think, the finance ministers' meeting on the 20th of February, which I believe is the deadline to get something sorted out.
Well, it's an informal deadline. It's the last formal meeting before the election cycle starts in Europe. We have the Dutch elections in March, then you've got the French elections in April and May, and I think that they wanted to get this sort of bedded down before we get into that sort of election cycle. But I think before that, there is a meeting of the Greek finance minister with the decision makers in Brussels, and there's some sort of optimism that some compromise arrangement is going to be coming out of that meeting as soon as the next couple of days or so.
This word compromise comes up a lot when we're dealing with some really weighty, meaty issues that effectively is going to give direction ultimately to the eurozone and the EU. You can't carry on doing compromises all the time. There's got to be a solution to get the underlying foundation problem sorted out.
The underlying foundation is Greece has to generate primary surpluses. So the government has to basically have an excess of money at the end of each year to pay down its debts. And how it does that, that's where you can get some sort of compromises. Politically, what the Greeks don't want to do is have these sort of headline cuts in pensions, school meals cancelled and that sort of stuff. So that's where the compromises can occur. How do you get to this primary surplus?
This is the problem, isn't it? The Greek, the balance of power in Greece is finely balanced at the moment. You get something that people don't agree with, and ultimately there's going to presumably have to be an election there. And then what?
Well, I think this is why I think the people in Brussels know that Tsipras's position is not as strong as he thinks it is. Tsipras thinks that the EU's position is not that strong because you have this election cycle coming up. You also have Donald Trump trying to wrest the EU apart, and you've got Brexit starting. So you've got classic game theory going on right now, where each side is saying, well, how much can I get out of the other side before they blink? And that's exactly what's happening at this moment in time.
Is Wolfgang Schäuble right? The only way they can cut their debt is by leaving the eurozone?
For the face value of their debt, yes. But you can sort of go into the mathematics of this. You can reduce the sort of, if you like, the real value or the present value of debt by reducing interest payments or the timing of interest payments. So that's where there is an element of compromise possible.
Who stands to lose most out of that? Is it the eurozone? Is it the EU? Who is the one that's going to lose out? Because ultimately you're saying to someone that's lent the money, you're not going to get it all back.
Well, ultimately, yes, what you're doing is you are reducing the present value of the debt slightly. But in doing so, you're preventing a breakup of the euro area. Now, you could sort of say, well, Greece is small. Nevertheless, the first break is significant. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. If you're Germany, you're saying, well, look, let's hold the euro area together at a time where it's coming under threat from political developments in the UK and in the US. And for that, maybe we reduce the net present value of the debt slightly.
And who stands to lose most out of that? And on what calculation do you base your contribution to the Greek fallout?
Well, I mean, anyone who holds Greek debt, so that would be the ECB, the ESM, the IMF to a certain extent from previous bailouts, will to a certain extent lose out if the net present value has diminished. But the gain from that is you have some sort of stability, some political stability, and that's unquantifiable. But clearly there is some economic gain from political stability.
I got the feeling that reading beyond the headline there from Wolfgang Schäuble that Germany has a lot to lose out of this. Is that right?
Well, as the largest shareholder of the ECB and the largest shareholder of the ESM and EFSF, yes, technically they have they're the largest loser of a default. But relative to GDP, everyone loses because France is the second largest shareholder. Italy is next, and so on and so on. So in euro terms, yes, Germany loses the most, but as a share of GDP, it's sort of spread amongst the members of the euro.
And this is, of course, the point you make about the fact that you just mentioned the three economies there, where there's political potential disruption this year: Germany, France, and Italy. So one wonders how all that's going to end out. Let's just quickly wrap this up and take a look at what might happen if there isn't an agreement and things do fall apart. Is there likely to be, I mean, Greece, let's say, exits. Is there then likely to be another weak member that might pop up all of a sudden, has got problems that Greece has got now that we don't really know or don't really see too much about because Greece is the headline? I mean, are we looking at Spain and Portugal?
Well, I mean, we are, but they've improved their finances dramatically. So the next weak link from an economic perspective is Italy. But even Italy's improved its finances since the low point of 2011. So the question, this is the question we had 2 or 3 years ago, is Greece an outlier? And in many ways it is an outlier. However, in the sort of current fragile sort of situation politically, it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So you've got to be very, very careful. I mean, in terms of the actual, the question right now is, will a deal be struck imminently? But in terms of when it becomes too painful for Greece, it's not going to be until the summer when its next big debt repayment comes. So I don't think we actually get a sort of anything close to a Grexit until much later this year, if it got to that.
So it's a can-kicking exercise until we get to that point.
It is, and I think the really key question is, can Greece survive till 2018 when this current bailout ends? And that's when we ask the question, are they improving their finances? Is debt sustainability on an improving or a deteriorating path? That, to me, is the key question. Get through this bailout programme, survive till 2018.
We'll have you back before then. Dhaval, okay. Thanks indeed for joining us. Dhaval Joshi there from BCA Research on the latest on the Greek debacle. And don't forget that this video was shot around about midday on Friday, so any developments subsequent to that, of course, we can't consider.